The crystalline spires of New Geneva Station caught the light of distant stars, creating a shimmer that never failed to capture Commander Rhiannon Drake's attention. Standing at the observation deck's edge, she adjusted her formal diplomatic uniform and tried to quiet the flutter of nerves in her stomach. After 15 years in the Terran Diplomatic Corps, this would be her first encounter with a Zephyrian delegation. "Commander, they're requesting entry to the diplomatic suite." Lieutenant Jean Park's voice came through her comm unit, steady and professional despite the historic nature of the moment. "Acknowledged." "I'm on my way," Rhiannon responded, turning away from the view. Her boots clicked against the polished floor as she made her way through the station's pristine corridors. The Zephyrians were known for their biological technology and genetic mastery, but they rarely engaged in direct diplomacy with other species. This meeting could change everything. The diplomatic suite's doors whispered open at her approach. Inside, the environment had been carefully calibrated to Zephyrian preferences, slightly cooler than human comfort, with a purple-tinged lighting that mimicked their home world's atmosphere. The delegation was already waiting. Rhiannon's breath caught as she laid eyes on Ambassador Nixis. Unlike the grainy hull of it she'd studied, nothing had prepared her for the reality of a Zephyrian up close. Nixis stood nearly 7 feet tall, with iridescent skin that shifted between deep purple and midnight blue. Bioluminescent patterns flowed across their exposed arms like constellations coming to life, and their eyes, 4 of them, arranged in a diamond pattern, were the color of liquid silver. "Commander Drake," Nixis spoke, their voice carrying harmonics that made Rhiannon's skin tingle. "We appreciate your world's hospitality." The universal translator rendered their words perfectly, but something about the original tones lingered, haunting and beautiful. "Ambassador," Rhiannon bowed slightly, the prescribed greeting for their species. "New Geneva welcomes you. I trust your journey through the void gates was comfortable." "Quite," Nixis moved with liquid grace as they approached the conference table. "Though I find myself more interested in discussing why your heart rate has elevated since entering the room." Rhiannon felt heat rise to her cheeks. Of course, Zephyrian sensitivity to biorhythms. She'd read about it but hadn't expected such direct address. "I apologize. This meeting represents a significant moment in our people's relations. Some excitement is natural." "Indeed. Was that amusement in those silver eyes? Though I suspect there's more to it than diplomatic anticipation. Your pheromone patterns are intriguing." The other members of the Zephyrian delegation had taken their seats, but Nixis remained standing, those 4 eyes fixed on Rhiannon with an intensity that made her dizzy. Warning bells rang in her mind, this wasn't proceeding according to protocol. The briefings had emphasized Zephyrian formality, their careful adherence to diplomatic structures. "Perhaps we should begin with the trade proposals," Rhiannon suggested, trying to steer them back to safer ground. "Your government expressed interest in our quantum computing technologies." Yes, Nixis waved a hand dismissively, the motion leaving trails of bioluminescence in the air. "But I find myself far more fascinated by something unexpected. Commander, are you aware that your genetic structure resonates with Zephyrian frequencies?" The room went still. The other delegates, both human and Zephyrian, turned to stare. This was definitely not in the protocol. Rhiannon's diplomatic training warred with the strange pull she felt toward the ambassador. "I'm afraid I don't understand," she managed, though part of her did understand, on some level she couldn't quite acknowledge. "Then allow me to demonstrate." Before anyone could react, Nixis had closed the distance between them. One iridescent hand reached out, not quite touching her face. The air between them seemed to crackle with energy, and Rhiannon felt something deep in her cells respond to the ambassador's proximity. "This is highly irregular," Lieutenant Park's voice cut through the tension, but it seemed to come from very far away. "Indeed it is," Nixis agreed, still focused entirely on Rhiannon. "But then, the most important discoveries often violate protocol, wouldn't you agree, Commander?" Rhiannon knew she should step back. Knew she should redirect the conversation to safe diplomatic channels. Instead, she found herself drawn forward, into the strange energy field emanating from the ambassador's form. What exactly are you suggesting? That perhaps there are matters more vital than trade agreements to discuss. Nixus's bioluminescent patterns pulsed in a rhythm that seemed to match Rhiannon's heartbeat. Matters that could change both our species' understanding of genetic compatibility. The implications were staggering. Cross-species genetic resonance was theoretical at best, yet here she stood, every cell in her body singing in harmony with an alien ambassador while 2 governments' worth of diplomats looked on in shock. One mistake, one moment of allowing protocol to lapse, was about to change everything. The Zephyrian genetic analysis chamber hummed with bioorganic technology, its walls pulsing with living light that matched the rhythm of Rhiannon's heartbeat. 3 days had passed since the diplomatic incident, and now she found herself deep within the visiting delegation's ship, surrounded by curious scientists and their unsettling equipment. Fascinating, Dr. Valus murmured, her 6-fingered hand hovering over a display of shifting geometric patterns. The senior geneticist's skin rippled with deep blues and greens, reflecting her intense concentration. The resonance patterns are unprecedented. Rhiannon lay on the examination platform, trying to ignore the tendrils of organic sensors that curled around her arms. Is this really necessary? The trade negotiations have been temporarily suspended, Nixus interrupted, entering the chamber with their usual fluid grace. This discovery takes priority. The ambassador had shed their formal diplomatic robes for a more practical laboratory outfit that did little to diminish their commanding presence. Their silver eyes fixed on Rhiannon with an intensity that made her breath catch. The Genetic Council is extremely interested in your case, Nixus continued, moving to study the readings. Human Zephyrian genetic compatibility was considered impossible until now. Lieutenant Park, who had insisted on accompanying Rhiannon as security, shifted uncomfortably. Commander, this goes well beyond our mission parameters. Perhaps we should contact Earth Central. Earth Central has already been notified, a new voice announced. Dr. Marcus Wong, Earth's leading xenogeneticist, strode into the chamber, his usually immaculate lab coat wrinkled from recent space travel. And they're just as interested as the Zephyrians. Rhiannon felt a headache building behind her eyes. Does everyone know about this? Not everyone, Dr. Wong replied, already engrossed in the data streams. Just every major genetic research institution in both our species. Do you understand what this means, Commander? Your genetic structure shows signs of adaptive resonance with Zephyrian biology. It's as if your DNA is reaching out to them. More specifically, Dr. Valus interjected, reaching out to Ambassador Nixus. The resonance patterns are strongest between them. Rhiannon caught Nixus's gaze again, and that now familiar energy crackled between them. The organic sensors around her arms pulsed brighter in response. This could change everything, Dr. Wong continued, excitement clear in his voice. Cross-species genetic compatibility could lead to advances in medicine, biotechnology, even space adaptation. The possibilities are endless. And the dangers considerable, a stern voice cut through the chamber. Ambassador Kylith, the Zephyrian chief of delegation, entered with an entourage of guards. Their skin displayed patterns of warning red. This unauthorized genetic investigation ends now. Nixus straightened, their own patterns shifting to defensive configurations. Chief Ambassador, the scientific implications are potentially devastating to our genetic purity, Kylith interrupted. The Council has reviewed the preliminary data and made their decision. Commander Drake will be quarantined until we can determine if this resonance poses a threat to our species. Quarantine? Lieutenant Park stepped forward, hand moving to his sidearm. That's not happening. The chamber erupted into chaos. Zephyrian guards moved to surround Rhiannon while Park called for backup. Dr. Wong and Dr. Valus protested the interruption of their research. But Rhiannon barely heard any of it, because Nixus had moved to her side, their hand finally making contact with her skin. The world exploded into sensation. Where their hands touched, bioluminescent patterns flowed from Nixus's skin onto hers, creating intricate designs that spoke of genetic memories and ancient possibilities. The chamber's organic technology responded, every surface pulsing in harmony with their connected energy. Impossible, Kyleth breathed, all four eyes wide with shock. No, Nixus replied, their voice carrying harmonics that seemed to resonate with Rhiannon's very DNA. Not impossible. Inevitable. The universe itself is telling us that isolation is no longer the answer. The genetic sensors were going wild, recording everything as human and Zephyrian biology synchronized in ways that defied conventional science. And in that moment, as ancient genetic barriers crumbled, Rhiannon realized that her diplomatic mission had evolved into something far more profound. She had become living proof that the gap between their species could be bridged. The question was, would their civilizations allow it to happen, or would fear of change destroy the greatest discovery in the history of both their species? The underground medical facility on Europa buzzed with activity as Dr. Wong hunched over his quantum microscope. 3 weeks had passed since the incident on New Geneva Station, and the situation had only grown more complex. Rhiannon watched as he examined the latest tissue samples, her arms still tingling from where the bioluminescent patterns refused to fade. The genetic integration is accelerating, he announced, his voice a mixture of awe and concern. Your DNA isn't just resonating with Zephyrian biology anymore, it's evolving. Is it dangerous? Lieutenant Park asked from his position by the door. He hadn't left Rhiannon's side since they'd fled the Zephyrian ship, defying both Earth Central and the alien delegation. Quite the opposite, a melodic voice answered. Nixus emerged from the shadows of the lab's far corner, their bioluminescent patterns dimmed to avoid detection. It's revolutionary. The ambassador had risked everything to follow them to this hidden facility, becoming a fugitive from their own people in the process. Their presence still made Rhiannon's modified genes sing with recognition. The Genetic Council is wrong about this, Nixus continued, moving closer to display their own changed patterns, now carrying hints of human DNA signatures. We're not witnessing contamination. We're seeing evolution in action. A distant explosion rocked the facility, causing equipment to rattle. Park's comm unit crackled to life, perimeter breach. Multiple hostiles, both human and Zephyrian. They found us, Rhiannon muttered, already moving toward the emergency exit. But Nixus caught her arm, their touch sending cascades of shared genetic information between them. Wait, the ambassador urged. Dr. Wong needs to show you what we discovered. The scientist quickly activated a holographic display, revealing a stunning simulation. Look at this genetic cascade. The resonance between you two isn't just affecting you, it's creating a template. Other humans and Zephyrians with compatible genetic markers could potentially achieve similar integration. Another explosion, closer this time. Park drew his weapon. We need to move. You don't understand, Dr. Wong insisted as he began transferring data to portable drives. This could end centuries of genetic isolation for both our species. The medical applications alone. The lab door burst inward. Ambassador Kyleth strode through the debris, flanked by both Zephyrian guards and human security forces. Their skin blazed with patterns of authority and rage. Genetic treason, they declared, all four eyes fixed on Nixus. You dare to corrupt our pure lineage? Pure? Nixus challenged, their own patterns flaring in defiance. Our ancestors engineered our species to adapt and evolve. They would weep to see how we've twisted their dream of perfection into stagnation. Stagnation? A new voice joined the confrontation. Admiral Chen of Earth Central Security pushed through the guards, her face hard with disapproval. Try civilization-ending catastrophe. Do you have any idea what unrestricted genetic mixing could do to human society? Rhiannon stepped forward, deliberately displaying her changed skin patterns. It could save it. Show them, Doctor. Dr. Wong activated another holographic display, this one showing medical data. The genetic adaptations aren't just stable, they're beneficial. Enhanced cellular regeneration, improved immune response, better radiation resistance. Everything we need for deep space exploration. And that's just the beginning, Nixis added. Our biological technology could be adapted to human use. Your computing systems could enhance our genetic engineering. Together, we could achieve things neither of our species could manage alone. Pretty words to justify perversion, Kyleth spat. The Council has ordered your genetic patterns purged, Ambassador. Commander Drake will be corrected as well. Like hell, Park snarled, raising his weapon. But Rhiannon placed a hand on his arm. No, she said quietly. No more violence. She stepped into the space between the two factions, her modified genes now glowing with a light that was neither human nor Zephyrian, but something gloriously new. Look at me, she commanded. Really look. I'm not corrupted. I'm not dying. I'm evolving, just like our ancestors did. Just like we're supposed to do. The room fell silent as her patterns pulsed with undeniable vitality. Even Admiral Chen seemed taken aback by the display. You can try to stop this, Rhiannon continued. Lock us up. Purge our genes. But you can't stop evolution itself. The barrier between our species is already breaking down. The only choice now is whether we face that future together or tear ourselves apart trying to prevent it. Nixis moved to stand beside her, their patterns synchronizing automatically. Dr. Wong's instruments whirred as they recorded the phenomenon, and in the stunned silence, the truth became undeniable, the future had already arrived. The only question was who would embrace it, and who would be left behind in the ashes of the old world. Deep within the quantum core of New Geneva Station, reality itself seemed to bend. The air crackled with bioelectric energy as Rhiannon and Nixis stood before the station's massive genetic accelerator, a forbidden fusion of human quantum computing and Zephyrian biotechnology that Dr. Wong had secretly developed over the past month. The entire station is under lockdown, Lieutenant Park reported, his voice tense as he monitored security feeds. Both Earth and Zephyrian warships are demanding surrender. Let them come, Dr. Wong said, his fingers dancing across organic interfaces. They're too late to stop what's already begun. The genetic accelerator pulsed with living light, its crystalline structures growing and shifting like a living thing. Around them, the station's walls had begun to transform, infected by the same evolutionary cascade that had changed Rhiannon and Nixis. Are you certain about this? Nixis asked, their four eyes fixed on Rhiannon. Their joined hands glowed with shared genetic patterns that now spread across the floor like liquid starlight. Once we initiate the quantum genetic broadcast, there's no going back. Rhiannon watched as her own skin rippled with increasingly complex patterns, no longer simply Zephyrian designs, but something entirely new. They gave us no choice. They would rather start a war than accept evolution. The station shuddered as the first weapons impacted its shields. On multiple screens, they could see the combined Earth-Zephyrian fleet moving into attack position. The two species had temporarily set aside their differences in their shared fear of change. Quantum genetic matrix at 90% synchronization, Dr. Wong announced. The station's infrastructure is fully integrated with the evolutionary template. We can proceed with the broadcast. Wait. Admiral Chen's voice boomed through the station's comm system. You have no idea what you're about to unleash. This isn't just about our species anymore. We've detected quantum anomalies throughout the entire sector. Whatever you're doing is affecting spacetime itself. Rhiannon laughed, the sound carrying harmonics that made the air shimmer. Of course it is. Because this was never just about genetics, was it, Nixis? The ambassador's patterns shifted into configurations that no human or Zephyrian had ever seen before. No, my love. It wasn't. The universe itself is evolving, and through us, it's inviting both our species to be part of that evolution. Dr. Wong stepped back from his console, his eyes wide as new understanding dawned. The genetic resonance, it's not just compatibility between species. It's a key, Nixis finished. One that our ancestors left for us to find when we were ready. When we could move past our fears and embrace true change. The station's transformation accelerated. Walls became transparent, revealing the space beyond where reality itself seemed to be shifting. The attacking fleet hung suspended in a web of quantum genetic energy that spread like neurons across the void. This is what the Genetic Council feared, Nixis continued. Not that our species would mix, but that we would transcend species entirely. They knew the signs, the ancient prophecies about the convergence. Lieutenant Park lowered his weapon, staring in awe as his own skin began to shimmer with newfound patterns. "Commander, what's happening to us?" "Evolution," James, Rhiannon answered, using his first name for the first time. "Real evolution. Not just of our bodies, but of reality itself. The universe is alive, and it's been waiting for us to wake up and join it." Through the station's transformed walls, they watched as the energy web connected with other stations, other worlds. Everywhere it touched, the rigid boundaries between species, between organic and artificial, between matter and energy, began to blur. "They're going to fire," Dr. Wong warned as the fleet's weapons powered up. "Let them," Rhiannon and Nixis spoke in unison, their voices carrying harmonics that made the fabric of space-time resonate. "The threshold is already crossed." The genetic accelerator reached full power, and in that moment, everything changed. The weapons fire dispersed into pure energy, absorbed into the growing web of evolution. The station itself dissolved into a structure of pure light and possibility. And through it all, Rhiannon and Nixis remained anchored to each other, their joint transformation a beacon for others to follow. As their consciousness expanded beyond physical form, they saw the truth. The universe had engineered this moment, using genetics as a language to teach its children how to transcend their limitations. Their love hadn't just broken down the barriers between two species, it had unlocked the next phase of cosmic evolution. The last thing they heard before their final transformation was Admiral Chen's voice, filled with wonder rather than fear. "My God, it's not an invasion or a corruption. It's an invitation." And then humanity and the Zephyrians, along with New Geneva Station and everyone aboard it, took their first steps into a reality where the very concepts of species and separation no longer held meaning. They became something new, something that could finally see the universe for what it truly was, not a void to be conquered, but a living consciousness waiting for its children to grow up and join the conversation. The genetic revolution had become a cosmic one, and in the end, the only mistake would have been refusing its call to evolve. Epilogue. In the space where New Geneva Station once stood, a new kind of structure pulsed with living light, not quite physical, not quite energy, but something in between. Those who approached it with fear saw only shifting shadows, but those who came with open minds could sometimes hear fragments of conversation between the entities that Rhiannon and Nixis had become. They spoke of evolution beyond flesh, of consciousness beyond form, and of a universe far stranger and more alive than either of their species had imagined. And in their wake, both humanity and the Zephyrians faced a choice: cling to the familiar and fade into obsolescence, or embrace change and join the cosmic dance of eternal transformation. The mistake that started it all, a simple failure to maintain protocol, had become the catalyst for the greatest revolution in the history of conscious life. And somewhere in the quantum web of evolved reality, Rhiannon and Nixis danced among the stars, their love story written not in genes or stars, but in the very fabric of spacetime itself.